Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard. Thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. We saw a little light snow over the last 24 hours or so, a little bit heavier in parts of southern South Dakota, maybe northern and central Nebraska here, along and north of Interstate 80, where we saw maybe 4 to 6 inches of snowfall. We mentioned that would be trailing off, though, in our Tuesday morning regional forecast as you headed to toward the east and the southeast, with lower amounts likely as you get into the mid-Mississippi Valley. And that's what we saw, maybe an inch or two, a light coating, and a narrow swath there from southern Iowa into central Illinois and eventually southern Indiana. But our attention now turns to this major upper-level wave we've got over the southwestern United States. As that begins to lift into the central plains and the Midwest over the weekend, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories to the north across parts of the upper Midwest. Those winter storm warnings where you see that pink shading across the Dakotas into Minnesota and northwest Wisconsin. You look at the map on the right, though, we got to talk about some severe weather on the southern end of this one as well, especially southern Missouri, the southern tip of Illinois there, western Kentucky and Tennessee going to get in on that severe weather threat. And even a marginal risk of maybe an isolated severe storm as far north as northern Missouri, central Illinois, and southern Indiana, maybe a little bit further north of Interstate 70, but I think that Interstate 70 corridor is going to be about the northern extent of where we see the severe weather risk during the day on Saturday into Saturday night. We'll break it down a little bit here. We're going to look at the upper level jet stream on the left. We'll look at the precipitation type forecast on the right. And we'll kind of click through this as that upper level wave ejects over the central plains. We start to see our low pressure center developing over the state of Kansas. And this is going to be on Saturday morning, right around 6 o'clock in the morning. We see that low really taking shape over central Kansas. And through the day on Saturday, it lifts off to the northeast. On Saturday evening, right around 6 p.m., that low should be centered over about the Quad Cities, right on the border of Illinois and Iowa. And our storm is in full force at this point with heavy snow falling across the upper Midwest. A severe weather threat will be ongoing now across the Mid-South, with showers and thunderstorms likely here across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And look at how tightly packed these isobars are. We'll talk about the wind threat here in a moment, but it's going to be a blustery weekend across the entire Corn Belt, essentially Saturday into Sunday. Even after this storm system's lifting out of the area on Sunday, still going to be seeing some blustery winds on the backside. We take a look at this upper level wave. There you see the very strong winds about 18,000 feet above our heads. And that's what's going to provide some of the wind shear, again, to take these thunderstorms across the Mid-South and the Ohio River Valley and potentially reach severe levels Saturday afternoon, evening, and Saturday night. We'll talk about the snow threat first. We've got accumulation here from the high-resolution NAM model on the left and the precipitation type forecast over here on the right. We can let this play out one more time, but you see it very clearly. You know, we've got very little question where the heaviest snow is going to fall. It looks like it'll be over, so maybe southeastern North Dakota, northeastern South Dakota, a lot of directions there. You got to be careful. Across much of Minnesota into northwestern Wisconsin as well. And if you look here at the transition zone, maybe I'll just go ahead and jump ahead to Saturday evening. It should be in the transition zone. We do have the threat for some freezing rain. We'll talk about ice accumulation here as well. Total accumulation, again, 6 to 10 inches is going to be likely across parts of the eastern Dakotas, getting into central Minnesota. Much of Minnesota going to see accumulating snow, but it's maybe the central part that'll see the heaviest into northwestern Wisconsin and eventually the UP of Michigan. Talking about the freezing rain threat, it's not a huge threat. We're not talking about, a crippling ice storm that's going to bring down the power grid or groves of trees or anything, but certainly enough to create headaches and some treacherous travel. We're looking at the probability of at least 1/10 of an inch of rain, freezing rain here, of ice accumulation. And we're looking at maybe 20 to 30% probability there across southern Minnesota, much of Iowa into southern Wisconsin. And again, you remember the heaviest snow is going to be just along and north of that area. So where we see the transition, maybe a little less snow, where some of that precipitation, instead of going to snow, goes to freezing rain instead. There it is one more time, the hazards map here, that pink shading, the winter storm warnings surrounding that, the blue shading. We've got winter weather advisories, and I think this will fill in with more winter weather advisories at the very least, if not an expansion of some of that winter storm warning area as well. Now we'll pivot down to the south. We'll talk about the warm sector, where we've got the warm, humid air, the instability. We'll be talking about the spring-like severe weather here with that slight risk across parts of the southern region here getting into the mid-south. And that's because we've got plenty of fuel coming from the Gulf of Mexico. We'll watch this. It plays a little slowly, but looking at dew points, a measure of moisture content here, and you see that wide open Gulf. We've got high pressure over the southeast. That's leading or feeding this air northward into the Ohio River Valley. That's where we see that deep moisture coming in. That'll provide the fuel for the thunderstorms and heavy rain threat across the mid-south and parts of the Ohio River Valley. So here it is on the left. We'll look at the high-resolution NAM one more time, the precipitation type model or precipitation type forecast. On the right, we're looking at surface-based CAPE. CAPE is how we kind of measure instability, a way that we measure the available energy for thunderstorms to tap into. And along with, it'll look very similar to that dew point map we just saw, where through the weekend we see the instability, that unstable air mass lifting north in advance of that storm system. This very strong low is able to lift that unstable air about to the Ohio River Valley. Again, maybe I'm going to go ahead and freeze this on Saturday evening. We'll jump ahead to 6 p.m. on Saturday. Let's go ahead. Here we are. And this is where we see, the instability getting into the Ohio River Valley, maybe tapping into that with some of these thunderstorms. But if you look earlier in the afternoon, we do see, the chance for some thunderstorms here. I don't want to rule out entirely the risk of a strong thunderstorm in parts of northern Missouri getting into central Illinois and maybe central Indiana. But we're not going to have the ingredients needed for the tornadoes. Be very unlikely to see damaging winds from thunderstorms in central Illinois. But this is where perhaps we get some elevated instability, some instability that's rooted, a couple thousand feet above our heads that could potentially bring one of these storms, get a robust updraft to produce some small hail. So the higher severe weather threat absolutely going to be along and south of the Ohio River. That's where we're talking about the potential for isolated tornadoes, the higher potential for large hail and damaging wind. I think the biggest threat for that going to be Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, right in here at the Boot Heel, Missouri. Parts of Arkansas getting into western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and maybe the far southern tip of Illinois here, seeing that tornado threat Saturday afternoon and evening. Total precipitation from this one, again, if Tennessee, Kentucky, parts of the Mid-South, just seems like it's relentless here. Another 1 to 2 inches at least, maybe heavier amounts where some thunderstorms do occur. But still, as you look all the way into the central Corn Belt here, where we're seeing just, garden variety showers and thunderstorms, still an inch of rain possible across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And then all the way to the north, all of this is falling as snow, but this still is precipitation, still moisture that's going to have to melt. An inch of liquid equivalent here in parts of central and southern Minnesota, that again, falling as snow, but all this is going to melt in a few weeks when we finally begin to warm up. Some of the good news with this one, we don't see the really bitter cold Arctic air coming in behind here. We'll look at the temperature forecast going through the weekend. We see it's very clear the storm system lifts through. We'll play it one more time here. You can follow it, the warm air feeding in, the cold air coming in on the cold front behind that. But look at that. We don't see the big purples and the pink shading with the Arctic air falling in behind it. We see a little cool air, but we rebound quickly with high pressure sliding in. We're going to kind of warm up into the middle part of next week. I want to talk one more thing about this storm system. It's the gusty winds. We're looking at wind gusts here as we head through the weekend. Starting off pretty tame as we look at the day on Friday with winds only gusting 10 to 20 miles per hour across much of the Corn Belt. A pretty quiet Friday, but that changes quickly as we head into the day on Saturday. That's where we're seeing the brown and the red shading suggesting wind gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour. And again, this is coming out of the south. That's what's bringing the warm, moist air into the region here. We've got 40 to 50 mile per hour winds out of the south. That's plenty to bring this warm, unstable air mass north into the Mid-South and the Ohio River Valley, again, fueling those severe thunderstorms. And I spend a lot of time talking about Saturday's threat, but I know the rumors are already flying about next week's storm. We've got another big storm system coming through the area. Looks like Wednesday, Thursday next week. I'm definitely going to hold off on details of that because we'll have Eric with another long-range update Monday morning, and I'll be back with you on Tuesday morning to give another regional forecast where we can really break down the impacts here. But we'll go ahead and play it here from the European long-range model. We'll look at the jet stream over here on the left and precipitation type forecast on the right. Here's this weekend storm, and then next week, We see this one lift out. I'll go a little bit slower. This would be Saturday's storm. You know, this looks familiar. We get through the day, Saturday into Sunday. This storm system lifts off to the north and to the east. As we begin the week, we got a little ridge of high pressure setting into the central United States. That's going to help us warm up and thaw out a little bit. But then it's as we get to the day on Wednesday already, another big trough, another big wave moving through the Midwest. Early look right now has this one tracking a little bit further north and a little bit stronger than Saturday's storm, and that would mean maybe the heavier snow a little bit further to the west and north, so perhaps Minnesota and Wisconsin get a break on this one and end up in rain, but I don't know how much of a break I call that, because then you got rain falling on top of all this snow that's melting. So any way you really look at it, we're going to be talking about a flood risk across much of the Midwest as we head into the spring. But there's your quick tease. You know, we'll get through Saturday's storm system, and then we'll turn our attention to Wednesday and Thursday of next week. As always, you know, I mentioned Monday morning, Eric Snodgrass will be back with you with our in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our ag forecast video. And then Tuesday morning, catch your next regional forecast right here. Have a great weekend.